Welcome to my channel, friends. This is Sonia. I'm so glad to have you here. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Let's build an amazing community together to share inspiring stories and wisdom from around the world. Today's story is about a Christmas tale of kindness and hope. It was a cold and snowy Christmas Eve in the little village of Woodbridge. The streets were decorated with twinkling lights and wreaths, and the smell of roasted chestnuts filled the air. Families bustled about, preparing for the big day, while laughter echoed from cozy homes. But in a small, rundown cottage at the edge of the village, 10-year-old Lucy sat alone by a flickering candle. Lucy's father, a carpenter, had passed away earlier that year, and her mother worked tirelessly as a seamstress to make ends meet. This Christmas was different. There was no money for a feast, no tree adorned with ornaments, and no presents to unwrap. Yet Lucy held on to hope. Her father had always taught her that Christmas wasn't about material things, but about love, kindness, and faith. As the evening grew darker, Lucy put on her threadbare coat and stepped outside. She decided to walk to the village square, where a large Christmas tree stood, its lights glowing warmly. Along the way, she saw Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman struggling to carry a heavy sack of firewood. "Let me help you, Mrs. Thompson," Lucy offered, her small hands reaching for the sack. Despite her own troubles, she knew her father would want her to help others. Mrs. Thompson smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Lucy. You've always been such a kind soul." When they reached Mrs. Thompson's home, the old woman invited Lucy in for a cup of tea. Her home was humble but cozy, filled with the aroma of spiced biscuits. Mrs. Thompson handed Lucy a biscuit and said, "You remind me of my daughter when she was your age. She had the same generous heart." Lucy stayed for a short while before heading back into the snowy night. As she walked, she spotted a young boy sitting on a bench, shivering in the cold. His clothes were thin, and his cheeks were red from the biting wind. "Are you all right?" Lucy asked gently. The boy nodded hesitantly but didn't meet her gaze. Lucy took off her scarf and wrapped it around his neck. "This will keep you warm. Do you have a place to stay?" The boy shook his head. He explained that he and his mother had been evicted and were spending the night in the village shelter. Lucy's heart ached for him. She gave him the biscuit Mrs. Thompson had given her and promised to visit him at the shelter the next day. By the time Lucy returned home, her mother was waiting with a worried look. "Lucy, where have you been?" Lucy explained everything, and her mother's expression softened. "You're such a thoughtful girl, my dear," she said, hugging her tightly. That night, as Lucy drifted to sleep, she felt a deep sense of peace despite the lack of gifts or decorations. She had made someone else's Christmas a little brighter. The next morning, Lucy and her mother were surprised to hear a knock at their door. When they opened it, they found Mrs. Thompson, the boy from the bench, and several villagers holding baskets of food, gifts, and a small Christmas tree. "We wanted to thank you, Lucy," Mrs. Thompson said. "Your kindness reminded us all of what Christmas truly means. We've come to share the joy with you." Tears filled Lucy's eyes as she and her mother welcomed everyone inside. For the first time in months, their home was filled with laughter and love. The moral of the story: Christmas is not about how much you give or receive in material gifts. It's about the kindness you show, the hope you bring, and the love you share. Even the smallest acts of generosity can create ripples of joy that come back to you in unexpected ways. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this story inspired you to reflect on the meaning of true happiness. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every bit of your support helps us bring you more meaningful stories. Until next time, stay happy, stay peaceful.